But yeah, so we wanted to talk about, and on the topic of games, so I don't know how to preface this. So games as a service are live games, right? We're talking Fortnite, Apex, Fallout 76, Destiny 2. I'm trying to think of other ones. The Division, Rainbow Six Siege, what Assassin's Creed has become, more or less. These games have kind of become the new norm in the gaming space, right? When Skyrim came out, it was open world RPGs. Now it was battle royales, and now it's games as a service or live games. So Outriders came out, and you and I played the demo, and I think you enjoyed it more than I did.
Yep.
And you're planning on buying it, right?
Probably when it comes on sale. I'm not doing it right out of the gate.
Okay. So Outriders came out 2 weeks ago?
Something like that.
And True Vanguard, who is a big-time Destiny creator, went to Twitter because he had noticed people were saying, don't buy this game because once you beat the story, that's it. So people were basically saying, don't buy this game because they're not planning to support it for 2 years down. They're not planning to constantly give us updates and content down the road. Boy, howdy, let me tell you, I had a feeling this was going to happen at some point. And this is indicative of I think the pitfall of games as a service. So Zeph, do you want to give your thoughts when you saw that whole tweet video? I'm going to try and link it in chat for everybody watching.
I completely agree with him, right? Because his basic analogy that he went into is like, so you fully enjoyed the product, like you have consumed the product, you got to the end of it, right? You have effectively, quote unquote, used it up, outside of normal extra play hours. Like you played the full campaign, but you have consumed the product. And he likened it to going to Starbucks and buying a coffee and drinking the whole thing and enjoying it, and then being like, wait a minute, there's no more coffee. I don't like this. This was a bad product. Even though, like, you got to the end of it and you fully enjoyed it. Like, you have consumed the product.
Right. And then going back and saying, I want a refund because there's not more of it.
Yeah, exactly. Which I've always thought was foolish, and just establishing what a game is supposed to be from the get-go, because a lot of people, when like the new God of War was announced, it was very clear it was going to be an encapsulated game. It was not going to be a game as a service. There wasn't going to be any DLC. It was very much, you popped it in, you downloaded it, or you got it off the online store, right? And you played it, and that was it. That was all you were getting, aside from the extra hours you wanted to put in. But once you finished the campaign, that was it. And people were like, oh, okay, cool. It's been like that for countless games, like Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, just even off the Sony games. But it's been like that for,
literal years.
Yeah, literal years.
Decades.
Super Mario, Pokemon, like, come on. And so this new concept of like, this game, I have to have this game supported for me for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And if I'm not getting that, it's a bad game. It's a bad product. When like literally the games you grew up on, that was it. You consumed the product, and either you just kept playing it because you had fun, or you just moved on to a different game.
Yeah,
that was it.
There was nothing more. There was nothing less. Chat, I can't find the link right now. When I do, I'll post it in Discord for you guys. But it's so. Oh, I found it. Just as I said that, we found it, boys. So my whole thing is, I also completely agree with him, and you. And I love live service games, right? I play World of Warcraft, I play Destiny. I own Fallout 76, and I dabble in Apex Legends, and I own Division 1 and 2. One of them I got free, I think. But this is the problem that I think the industry is going to face as you move forward, is now people are going to expect AAA games to constantly feed them content.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, here's a complete game. This is it. Maybe you get a DLC pack, right? I mean, look at what happened with Borderlands. So you go all the way back to, and we'll start at Borderlands 1. Borderlands 1 comes out kind of as a sleeper, right? Sleeper hit. Starts getting this cult-like following. And then they're like, okay, we have 4 DLCs. They do 4 DLCs, and they're like, okay, that's it. And everyone's sitting there like, we want more. And they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry. Borderlands 2 comes out. Borderlands 2 has its big DLCs, and then like mini seasonal DLCs, but that's it. After Tiny Tina, there was no more Borderlands 2 content. That was it. Borderlands, the pre-sequel, kind of the same thing. But now Borderlands 3, oh yeah, we got crap, I think they've got like what, 3? They just launched a new DLC. They have mayhem mode, seasonal events, all this stuff, you know, and it's like, whoa. What happened? What happened to just releasing a game and having it be a finished product?
It doesn't make as much money. That's exactly what happened.
You know what? It's a shame, because I think there are games out there that do make enough money. But you're right. These, and I don't want to say developers. It's a lot on the publisher, right? So like Ubisoft publishes and develops. And they've moved to that monetization field. EA, all EA games nowadays, you know, besides Jedi Fallen Order, it was like, money please.
Mm-hmm. I would say that sure, it can be on the developer somewhat historically, but I would say this largely is on the consumer of just wanting more, needing more, not being satisfied with what they have. And so some companies and developers initially latched onto it with like, yeah, this is an easy way to make money, you know, just give us the dollars, just give us the dollars. And the business model worked. And so other companies were forced to follow that model, even though they don't necessarily want to. But really, this comes down to the consumer and how much they are electing to consume and what they find to be an acceptable level of consumption. So I wouldn't necessarily put it all on the developer.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the same argument. Speaking of, Bethesda just announced Season 4 for Fallout 76. And they're showing all the content and stuff they're giving away. I agree, and I think it goes back to the same argument we started seeing a couple years ago from like Angry Joe and stuff when it came to pre-orders. You remember the whole argument, like, don't pre-order.
Yep.
Don't pre-order games. Right? Now I pre-ordered games. I was one of the people that was like, I want a pre-order game. I want to make sure I have my copy of a game when it comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't pre-order every game. It was the big games that I really wanted, you know, the guaranteed spot for. And then the argument transitioned to collector's editions and deluxe editions, and it's like season passes. I think season passes was really the kind of catalyst that kicked off all of this, because they were like, shit, people will pay like $40 for a season pass. And we could just give them, like, you know, 6 hours of content and they'll accept it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then you got microtransactions. So then you've got loot boxes, and that's a whole nother debacle. And it's to the point where the industry is just like nickel and diming us for everything. And you want to know what? Most times, games now are not as good as games that came out when you and I were teenagers. And that's not me being like, oh, back in my day, games were better. No, like, no. I've been really hyper fixated on the Assassin's Creed franchise lately, and I've been watching a lot of videos. And I've been watching a lot of retrospectives and a lot of people going back and revisiting old games. And I'm sitting there and, you know, creative vision aside, Assassin's Creed games nowadays are not as good as Assassin's Creed games that came out in like the mid 2000s. And I think one of those things is like now it's like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We have the Yule Festival going on. Oh, and this month we have this going on. And we're going to give you this free update. And we're going to give you this free update. And we want you to like kind of constantly play our game. Assassin's Creed 2 gave you the game. And then they were like, oh yeah, here's the Katarina Swartz missions. That's it. We'll see you in 9 months for Brotherhood.
Yep.
And it was like, there's a reason games like Assassin's Creed 2 are held on such a higher caliber than games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And it's because games like Odyssey are like, well, we want you to keep coming back. So not only are we going to kind of pad out the game, we're going to make it, you know, really long and tedious. So you pay us money to give you an XP and gold boost. So you level up faster and you can buy more gear. And we're also kind of just going to drip feed you content to keep you coming back. Now, this is excluding MMOs, because MMOs have always been this game, right? MMOs have always been online. They've always been constant feeds. So I'm not even talking about World of Warcraft. And to an extent, Destiny, right? Like, Destiny, thankfully, Luke Smith came out and was like, Destiny is an MMO. That is what we want it to be, right? You know, after Activision finally stepped away, thank goodness. But now when you have all these other games hopping on that trend, like The Division, Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six. I mean, because Tom Clancy's the biggest competitor. What else? Borderlands 3. I said Rainbow Six. You know, Apex. Fall Guys. Overwatch. It's when you have these games now that are flooding the market, and just the new Halo is going to be like this too. Halo Infinite's not going to be a $60, $70 release where it's like, here's everything. We're going to do 1 or 2 story extensions down the road. Halo Infinite is like, no, yeah, you're going to be able to play as like Master Chief all the time. And we're just going to kind of slowly. It's like, you know, when you go to an Italian restaurant and they bring you a nice big bowl of pasta, right? A nice hot bowl of macaroni with a nice gravy on it, nice big piece of sausage. And they're like, do you want some cheese? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, say when. But instead of grading it like a normal human being, they're just like, one little scrape. And then they sit there and wait. And then you're like, can I have some more, please? And they're like, one little scrape. And you're like, can I have some more, please? That's how it feels playing some of these games. It's like, okay, I beat the game. And it's like, no. We have more coming. You have to wait. It's not done yet. And it's like, why can't I just beat the game? You know? I'm actually more inclined to buy Outriders when it goes on sale because I know that it's a complete game. You know, more or less, right? Based, dude, it's true, because we had this conversation after the demo. I was like, if it's another live service game, I'm not buying it. You know, I don't. You only have so much time in your day, and it's bad enough I try to split my time between WoW and Destiny.
I have, honestly, outside of Destiny, I have very little interest in games as a service. Or live service games, rather. I am very much into games and gaming for that complete narrative and accomplishing an objective, and then, like, it's done. And if there is a DLC, cool, I'll probably buy it if I enjoyed the story. But I am in it for the complete journey and getting to the end and being like, yes, that was the end. I did it. You know,
Yeah. Oh
the
yeah.
end.
Could you? Because I have the Spider-Man case right here. Could you imagine if Insomniac had the balls to be like, here's like here's part one of like they give you act one of the game, and then there's like, oh, it's the Christmas event. There's a Christmas villain you gotta hunt down, and then they're like, act two comes out next year, and it's like it's $20, right? Like they charge like $40 for this, and then they add on. Could you imagine? There's a reason this game is, argued to be game of the year when it came out. Is because not only was it fantastically written, like it was an amazing superhero game, but it was finished. They were like, hey, here's the game. We have 3 DLCs that expand the world and the story, and then that's it. Even Miles Morales was going to be DLC, and they were like, oh, let's just make it an extra game.
Yep.
Like, the only reason I have Fallout 76 is because I'm a Fallout fan. Right? If I wasn't a Fallout fan, I wouldn't have 76. I wouldn't have bought it.
I was going to say that. It didn't even do it for me, man.
Dude, I bought it, and, like... But I have to, like, disconnect from the service of it. I have to treat it like a fully standalone Fallout game. Because every time I go back to play it, I see that new, because they do like a season pass, like their own, like a battle pass, like Destiny does now. And I see that, and it's 100 levels. They give you all this cosmetic and building stuff and all this, and I'm like, I can't go down that rabbit hole again. I can't. I have to treat this. I know there is a campaign, there are story missions, and when the story is over, I'll come back for the content. Like if they do another like campaign style thing, like with Wastelanders, and now they're adding Broken Steel Part 2, like I'll do that. Otherwise, I have to treat this like a Fallout game. Yes, there's going to be 200 hours of content in it regardless because it's a Fallout game. But like that's it. When I go back to play it finally, there's no way I'm chasing challenges to get season ranks. Because honestly, even in Destiny, it's like, is it worth it for 4,000 Bright Dust? Because I have not played Destiny since I did the Proving Ground Strike. Except to play Shadowkeep for a video. Like, that's all I've played it. But what do you... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, again, Destiny is pretty much like my exception to games as a service. And I don't... It's less that I dislike games as a service because I think that they can be a lot of fun, right? I mean, WoW has done as well as it has. Destiny is still thriving. And I mean, they can fail too, obviously. Like if they're not up to that standard. Like, yeah, Anthem is the big one, rip. But that level and expectation of the consumer is brutal, right? No matter how much that world changes and evolves, no matter how much content you actually get, no matter how engaging the narrative is in that live service, I mean, even like Final Fantasy 14, right? Which I have heard honestly pretty great things about.
Yeah, Pop and Lock plays it.
It is never going to be enough. And I think the one thing that Final Fantasy 14 does better than those other games that I mentioned is that, and Pop and Lock, please feel free to correct me because you actually play the game. I've only heard things from people who play it regularly, but like they just kind of dump a major thing of content on you once every like 6 to 9 months, and they're like, all right, cool, see you in 6 to 9 months, but it's a lot of content. But the world is still ever changing, ever evolving. I'm not a huge fan of a seasonal model. I like expansions, right? But I'm not a huge fan of drip-fed content or time-gated content. For me, it's either like, let's do a big old expansion, and like I can kind of piece through it either at my insane pace, or I can just kind of mosey through it and play other games,
Yeah.
or give me a narrative that is encapsulated. But I feel like the narrative that is encapsulated is within that expansion topic, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind that the world keeps evolving, right? In fact, I think that's pretty cool to watch and experience and be a part of. But in like chunks, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So, Papamoth said he said you're 100% right. He hasn't even caught up with the main story yet.
mhm.
So,
And that may be a game that I dip into at some point and explore, because again, a lot of people that I trust to
mhm.
game in that kind of genre of just MMOs and live service games, they all say it's fantastic and that they can kind of just pick up and go whenever they want.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I think from what he's told me, you can play. Pop, correct me if I'm wrong. You can basically play everything except the latest expansion, and just go.
mhm, yeah. And for me, there is a difference between like episodic stuff in terms of games or comics or movies or shows, right? Because
Mhm.
when it's released on a weekly basis, like, we'll take Falcon and Winter Soldier. I am not at all going to spoil the show, but we'll take
Right.
Falcon and Winter Soldier,
I'm
right?
like 3 weeks behind.
I am not going to spoil the show at all. But the fact that I'm like, oh man, I can't wait until Friday. Like that episode was so dope, I can't wait until Friday.
Right.
And even just when I was watching TV as a kid, right?
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, like that show was so great. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen. And like, oh man, it's the mid-season finale. We gotta wait 2 weeks. Like, oh, it's so exciting. That I don't mind. But in the context of games, right?
Mhm.
Where I have a certain pace that I want to play at, and friends that I want to play at that are either not there or not necessarily interested, or they're playing other games at the time, or I've just like ripped through everything in a drip feed,
Mhm. Mhm.
that is less appealing to me than literally. And yeah, Falcon Winter Soldier is amazeballs. Highly recommend. Go watch it immediately after this podcast, or after his stream, because he's gonna stream after this too. But go watch it immediately.
Immediately.
Uh, immediately. That is not a request. And so, but in games, yeah, not a fan of that, because I have a pace that I like to play my games at, and
Of
I want
course.
to either be able to just like chill and not miss out on something, or rip through it and then be like, all right, cool.
Mhm.
Like I feel like that was a complete experience instead of ripping through and be like, that was it. This
Oh
is what we
yeah.
waited however many weeks or months for. Like that was it right there. So I'm not a fan of that drip feed necessarily in games, and it's a bit of a divide for me in media because, I can do that for books, I can do it for movies, I can do it for shows. Games for me, it is very different. I don't like it. I'd rather just receive a bunch of content and
Mhm.
then have the developer and publisher be like, all right, cool, see you in 9 months. Peace. Have fun. Like,
So, I agree because like I don't know books. So like I can binge a book. Like I binged the last Hunger Games book in a day.
mm-hmm,
I read it all during my school day. I came home and read it, and I finished it at like 8 o'clock at night. Right?
mm-hmm,
Games. Pop says there's a lot to do even when it's free to play. The entire vanilla game, and he believes the first expansion are free to play in Final Fantasy 14, which is insane, right?
ooh, yeah,
But this is why I'm doing the new light, more or less like leveling challenge, and doing 3 videos is because I want to give people a good understanding of if one, if Destiny's worth playing now, and
mm-hmm,
two, what you should spend your money on when you come into Destiny. And right now, Forsaken, like I said in my video, Forsaken is not worth buying if you're coming into the franchise new. It
mm-hmm,
Unless you want access to those planets specifically, it is not a cohesive, it's not a complete cohesive experience anymore. You do the campaign and that's it. They throw you into the Dreaming City.
mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what triumphs, like you're not going to know what ascendant challenges are. The game doesn't tell you to do any of these things. But that's See, I told you Destiny was related at the start of this episode.
What? Impossible.
What do you feel about the seasonal model Destiny's taken over the past 2-3 years since Forsaken to now?
I prefer the just drop of a giant expansion with things that like happen. I think that their seasonal model has gotten better, right? And I'm excited to see where it goes, because like the weekly challenges have kept me engrossed, right? Like that's a reason for me to at least linger a little bit longer than seeing what's in the Eververse,
right?
Making a couple people uninstall in the Crucible, and then going home for the week.
Are you still using random guns in Banner, or have you gone back to shotties?
I mean, I still do random guns on request, and it's usually a fun time.
Okay.
But if there's no one around to make a request, then yes, I'm a horrible meta scumlord. But in terms of the actual seasonal model itself, like at its core, I do not like drip-fed content.
Yeah.
That said, I feel like their seasonal model has been improving in quality. Because most seasonal models, you're going to get something where it feels like Season of the Worthy, and you're like, all right, I absolutely hate this, and I'm going to leave forever and all time. At the same time, though, you're even in that model that is terrible and you hate it forever and all time, you're still getting more content than you would have in Curse of Osiris, right? To liken this to Destiny, where you have that chance of getting this thing in like every couple months, right? And it drops, and that's your content for the next couple months, right? That is all you're gonna get. You have everything right up front, but that's all you're gonna get. There is every chance that what you just got is awful. So that is the one advantage of having the seasonal model, that I'm like, okay, I can see it.
So I'm kind of torn, right? How my first question to you is, compared to the Forsaken model, the Beyond Light model and the Forsaken model, which one do you think is the better model?
Well, see, now this is tricky, because Forsaken, you have like the hardest hitting seasons,
right? Well, depending who you ask, Season of the Drifter was, Joker's Wild was not the best, but
Joker's Wild was not the best, but then you have Season of Opulence, which I do not
Penumbra,
care who you are.
Penumbra was
that
fire.
Was the best.
Oh yeah,
that was the best
easily.
season.
So here's
I'm a fan of longer seasons. I don't mind the seasonal model, but I am a fan of longer seasons where it's not necessarily drip fed. Like, they don't give you everything at once. They have a little surprise, like they have 0 Hour, or they have Whisper in there. Like a mystery dungeon that they just toss. Like, here you go. Like a couple 6 weeks in, they don't say anything. They just put it in the game and somebody finds it. But I'm a fan of that longer season where, you've got to play through the game, you've got to power up to get to do everything. But otherwise, they're like, yep, here it is. It's all on the table. This is what you have to look forward to. Go. As opposed to like, all right, you can do this thing this week, but then next week you can do this thing. Like, I don't know. I don't like that as much.
So, see, it's hard. It's hard because Bungie's more or less self-running now, right? Like, there's no Activision. So when you look at when you look at Forsaken to Shadowkeep, they had 3 studios working in tandem. When you look at Destiny 1, they had Activision backing them. I'm not a fan of seasonal content. And while I agree that Beyond Light has improved the seasonal model, especially between Season of the Hunt and Season of the Chosen, it still kind of shoehorns you into, if you don't play, you're going to miss the content.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Even say financial, like say you can't play, right? For whatever reason. real reason, you're just bored, right? Eventually that content is going to go away. That content will not stay. Versus, here's Rise of Iron. Here's the Taken King. This content is here. It'll be here. I think I know I would probably, and it's hard because I enjoyed coming back every Tuesday to get my story mission. Because like My Name is Bife mentioned, the narrative felt more episodic. But the gameplay was like, this is what you're going to do for the next 3 months. And it's like kind of just this rotating like, oh, what's the flavor of the week for gameplay this time?
Yep.
So I think I would enjoy it more if there was more focus on the narrative and less focus on these rotating systems that just come in. This is what you do for 3 months, then we're going to take it away. You know, like, yes, now they're staying for a year, but it's like, this is what you're doing. 3 months are over. Now you're going to do a whole new different thing.
Yep.
I know that I've always liked like, I was excited for Beyond Light. But then, you know, once you do the story and the raid, all you have is sabotage missions. And like legendary lost sectors, like separated from the core game. Yeah. Like, it feels like expansions, and I know Luke Smith was like, you may never get another Forsaken sized expansion. Okay. Give me Rise of Iron. Give me an Age of Triumph sized expansion. It just feels like expansions are so much shorter, and I want to wrap up the podcast, but you and I can still talk and just kind of like just chatting, because I've been live for like an hour now, and I'm sure Cake is going to be soon, so I don't know if I'll have time to stream a game. But yeah, I think to wrap up, final thoughts, and then we can transition back to Destiny after we record. Final thoughts, I wish games would just release, and if they want to do a DLC or two to kind of expand the narrative, right? Fine. But I just wish games would stop being like, here's a little bit, it's like the James Woods bit in Family Guy.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Exactly! That's what it feels like, even with games I love, right? That's what it feels like, and I think what that's doing is it is setting an expectation in gamers that every game has to be like that. Because now, God of War Ragnarok is going to come out. And you know Santa Monica is going to be like, no, that's it, that's the game.
Yep.
And people are going to be like, but I want DLC. Right? Because we'll be that far ahead of us now, where more of these live service games are coming out, and Santa Monica's going to be like, there's no DLC. It's the game. It's done. And people are like, don't buy it. Right? You know, you have your real God of War fans. Then you have all these new Zoomer kids that are like, that's it. It's just like, there's nothing after the story. That's my final thoughts on it. What are your final thoughts?
I mean, that's basically it, right? I mean, I feel like you have to be okay with the fact that the game is either self-contained, or there's possibility for DLC, or it's live service, and you kind of got to be okay with that. It's fine to want to experience their narrative more, and it's fine to want to play in that creative sandbox more, and you know, because that's a hallmark of good storytelling. Of even when the story is over, being like, well, what happens next? You know, that's a hallmark of good storytelling. What's not okay, and what is never okay, is going and attacking the developer and the publisher because of your expectations, because you didn't get exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
Right. So I think people really need to temper their expectations of like, this game is going to be this way, you know, and if that's not for you, then okay, either go play a different game, because there are hundreds and thousands of games, or don't be shitty.
Yeah. Moral of the story is vote with your wallet. Play the games you want. Make sure you're educated. Because, you know, if I was just like, oh, I love Outriders, and I bought it, and then I found out, oh, the game never ends, I'd probably be upset.
Mm-hmm.
With all that said, thank you, Zeph, for joining me this week.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Links for all the social media will be down below. For Zeph's Twitch, for my YouTube channel, for the Discord. And until next time, don't forget to lift, feast, and game. We'll see you then.